Okay. Years ago, I built TV decoders. We had a channel 68 WHT out of probably West Orange, out that way. And it was channel 68, and it was scrambled. After 8 o'clock at night, it would switch to scrambled movies. And I had that decoder built. And I was in the Radio Shack and talking to one of the managers, and he was having trouble getting his decoder working. And I gave him some tips. I gave him some of my schematics. I drew some drawings. So I left, and the next time I went back to that Radio Shack store, the manager was happy. He goes, I did what you told me to do, and he says, I got it working. He did a weird thing. Instead of using the switches and stuff, he made a plug-in module. So he would just plug the module into the socket in the back of the TV, and then it would get him the scrambled television channel. He didn't want to leave it in the television set. I guess he was afraid maybe they'd raid the house. Well, anyway, he hands me some schematics, and it showed how to take an aluminum sled, one of them round snow sleds, and make a microwave antenna out of it, along with a coffee can, a piece of brass, and a circuit board and some transistors. And I have most of the parts still around here. And he gave me the information, and I took it home and I read it, and here's how it was. Way back, there were microwave links between hospitals, and doctors could watch another doctor at another hospital do an operation via this microwave link. And in later years, the hospitals got away from using it, and the FCC gave it to HBO. So HBO was able to use this one frequency between hotels and the Empire State Building, and they would do HBO. So this guy gave me the schematics, and he says, this thing picks up HBO. So I said, all right. So I got the article, I got it home, and one of the weird things it needed, I'm going to show you this. These are things you probably never saw before. This is a feed-through capacitor, and you solder it to a metal can, and it allows the DC voltage to go from the outside of the shielded can to the inside, and it also has a certain amount of capacitance from the center lead to the can. So what it does is it keeps any RF noise from getting into the oscillator can or getting out of the oscillator can on the B+. So this is a feed-through capacitor, and I might have a larger size. You might have seen these. Okay, here's a feed-through capacitor that's a little bigger in size, and you'll see these on TV tuners around RF work. Here's the bigger one, and then I think here's a really weird one that gets press fitted into a hole. So I needed one of these feed-through capacitors because I never did an RF microwave receiver before. So I wanted to keep all the parts as exact as I could. So I went looking for these, and nobody knew what I was talking about. And the picture in the article was very vague. But later on I realized they're on TV tuners. You'll just see this part sticking up out with the wire soldered on it. And if you look, this is on the inside to a coil or whatever, but it's called a feed-through capacitor. Now, the other thing too is you had to have microwave diodes, and this is called, I think it's called a pin diode. It's an HP. It'll detect signals to 3 gigahertz. This is very old. I got a bag of them. Now, I needed them, and there was only one place that would sell me the HP diode, and that was Newark Electronics. So I shot out on the highway, and I sat down with the guys, and I opened up an account, and I had to pay $100 to open the account up, and then I ordered $100 worth of these HP diodes, and I waited, and 2 weeks later I get the letter back and my check's back, and Newark Electronics says they can't fill my order, and no reason. They wouldn't talk to me. They did not want me to have these diodes because they're microwave, and they maybe thought I was doing something nefarious, which I basically was. So I sat down and wrote HP a letter, and HP sent me a "we're sorry" letter, and I think 10 diodes or 5 diodes, whatever. This is the original package, and I was able to put the thing together. Now, the other thing you needed was a 1 to 3 picofarad tuning capacitor, and it was called a piston capacitor. And here's a pretty big one. I got them smaller, but I figured for the video. Now, all this is a hunk of metal threaded with a piston, and this is glass, and the glass is plated, and this is the other contact. So this metal mounting part is not touching this part. This part is plated on glass. The glass is the insulator, and there's a piston that moves in and out. So the whole travel of this capacitor, in this case, I think this one's 5 picofarads. So you needed a trim cap. Now I cheated a little bit, and I got a Radio Shack 5 picofarad cap, and I made the whole thing, and I adjusted, and I could not get an aluminum sled, round snow sled. So I got a plastic one. I went across the street to the hardware store, and I had the woman cut me some screen that was aluminum, and I came back and I stapled it on the plastic sled. I had some arms that had to come up to hold the coffee can with the rod. There was a piece of brass tubing in there, and you had to have a special end connector, and you come down to this board, and it was called a strip line converter board. And I went up in the attic, and I aimed the dish, and my father's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I know I can't get the signal here, but I know I can get channel 68, which was my decoder channel." And he's like, "What?" I said, "Well, it's a little bit lower in frequency than the frequency I want to pick up. So if my circuit picks up U68 in the house, aiming through the walls, I know this is going to work outside." So I aimed it at U68, and I tuned it, and it came right in. And you could check. They told you how to check if the oscillator was oscillating, and all that nonsense. So anyway, my father goes, "What does that prove?" I said, "It's picking up to channel 68, and it's putting it out on channel 3. And my father's just staring at me. I said, "Dad, it's a tuner. The whole thing is a tuner. It picks up a microwave channel, which U68 technically is right on the edge of I think 1 gigahertz. Well, anyway, so it's picking that up, and it's the strip line converter is all working, and it's putting it out at channel 3. So anyway, I got a 12 volt television, and I hooked it up in my car, and I went up to the Ridge Road in my town, because I was down in the bottom of the valley, and I knew I couldn't get the signal there. So I got up there, and I'm in this bowling alley, and I'm in the parking lot, and I'm aiming it at the Empire State Building. I can clearly see the Empire State Building, and every time a truck goes by on the highway, and I mean it's pretty far away, the gust of wind kept moving the dish on me. I'm like, there's no way. And I'm standing there, and that's when I realized that a tractor trailer truck that's really hauling ass on a highway produces a burst of wind like you can't believe. I think I was like 150 feet from the highway. So anyway, I said, all right, next plan. I go down to a place called Gunnell Oval in Kearney. And I go down there, and I look, and there's nobody in the football field or anybody. I go down, I park my car, I set it all up. I'm tuning it in. I'm getting HBO, but it's real snowy. And I'm like, this is the worst thing that can happen to you. You know, the thing works, but it's snowy. So what's the problem? My dish, using the dish that's plastic with screen on it, is that the problem? Is it my mixer? I used a different capacitor, but the project did work. So anyway, I turn around, and the whole soccer team is behind me. Everybody's staring at me watching. "What are you doing here, mister?" I try to explain to them, of course. None of the kids even have a concept of what television is. Never mind explaining them that there are other frequencies you could pick up. And, of course, none of them knew what HBO was. So I basically kept packing up. I packed the car up, and I left. And that thing sat in the attic for I don't know how long, until I basically stripped the parts out. But I want to tell you, they could, HP, if it wasn't for HP sending me these diodes, I would have never got the project done. But I wrote them a letter. I said, yeah, I had opened an account with Newark Electronics for $100, and I ordered like $100 more of these diodes because they had a minimum order, and then they kick it all back. They won't tell me why. So I wrote that all in a letter, and then, this showed up, got it done, and that's the length I will go to build a project, just to see it work. And then I started talking to other people, and they said, "Oh yeah, that circuit works, but it's snowy." I'm like, "Thank God," because I would have went back into that and tried to figure out what the hell's going on. But I had all kinds of collections of parts. When I worked at Willway, I was working on some microwave boards, and I have some of the parts somewhere down in the drawers. But you gotta stay with a project, because if you put a project away in the closet or the drawer, you're never going to get to it ever again. And this project had so many sub stories to it. Like, I went up to Lashins in Denville, and I mentioned that I needed a feed-through capacitor, and I think this needed to be 100 picofarad. And the guy said he could get it for me, and he was all nervous, and he couldn't find it. He didn't know what it was, but he said he could get it for me. But that's what it looks like, and it's made to be dropped in a hole and soldered. And of course, piston capacitors, I explained to you that. But it's just so funny, all the different projects I built just to see them work. And I used to be Mr. Decoder Box. I would get information from a guy that worked from a cable company, and he said that the serial number of the box on the outside is what's in the chip on the inside. So I got a hold of a box that was shut off by the cable company. So all I had to do was find that chip, take it out. I put it on my EEPROM burner reader that I had built for a computer project, and I was able to read in binary what was on the chip. And then I converted it using the old system. I don't know if you've ever done binary to decimal. And this is before Windows had a calculator in it. I did it all the old way, and I found out that they had inverted the bit. So all I had to do was, when I programmed the new chip that I used a 1702 or whatever, no, 1702? It was an EEPROM. It was an 8-bit EEPROM, but I used it for just 1 bit. And what I did was I inverted what I put into the chip. So I didn't need any extra stuff. And I made a little header socket. We put it in, and it was the, wasn't Motorola, Quasar? No, it's another name. It might come to me. But the box was considered unbeatable. And I had that thing beat after it was out there for maybe 3 months. All the information was, the person told me that the serial number of the box is what's in the chip. And then we had a guy that had the box, had it turned on, and then it was a Zenith box. All I had to do was put his serial number in the chip with the header, and we plugged it in, and then we were sitting there, it wasn't working. So I let it on, we were talking, I guess it's not going to work. So just before we disconnected the box, the guy went to a different channel, and it was being decoded. And then I said, well, let's put it on the channel that we want to get. So we put it on the channel we wanted to get, and it was scrambled. And after it sat on that channel for like 5 minutes, it took the load, it took the download, and the box came on. And then I talked to the guy that had told me about the serial numbers of the box, and he says, yeah, you put the box on channel 12 or something like that, and it's just got like a weather channel thing. But on that channel, the loads come through, and it automatically loads. But I want to tell you, I built so many decoder boxes, and I would sit there with my decoder box, waiting for the cable company to actually put the channel on. They would put a test pattern on or whatever, and I would shut my box off, and the pattern would be scrambled. I'd put my box on, and it would be perfect. So I had to sit there and wait several days before they would use the system. And then at some point, I just didn't watch television that much anymore. The stuff they were producing was junk. and I stopped building decoders. But I used to do the WrestleMania for the guys. You had to go to your cable company and get a box, and you had to sign it out, and you had to have a driver's license and all that. They bring it home and you hook it up, and they'd run a test before WrestleMania would come on. You had to put it on, make sure your box was working, and then WrestleMania would come on. And I would sit there. Mine already passed the test, and then WrestleMania would come on. And then some of the cable guys, like when the Playboy channel first came out, they would put the Playboy channel up on a frequency that only the cable guys could get. They had a box, and I could get that. I could get the Playboy channel before it was available to the public. Yeah, like the one guy said, if it came from Mars, John would be able to decode it. But that was what I spent my life on, was all these stupid projects. And the way the world's going now, I still build stupid projects because things are getting really messed up. And I don't know if you look at the YouTube videos. What they're suggesting to me are a bunch of fake news ones. They're constant, because I see the headline, I look at the video, and then I go on the real news, and that story's not there. You know, Trump hung himself, or Trump's son shot some guy, or you got to see some of this stuff, and it's fake. It's just fake, and I keep deleting these things, and they keep suggesting them to me, and then I look at other people's videos, and they really don't show you anything dramatic, and I'm trying to as much as I can, but you got to realize that I had the ability to go to Radio Shack and get some parts. I could go over to the electronic barn and get parts 3 cents each, 2 cents each, and really stock up. And then I had a place I told you in Denville, it's called Lashins, and that was quite a ride. But I'd ride there at least once a month, walk around, and I'd buy stuff that I knew I was going to need. And that's when I got into perf board, and they sold Vector perf board that was blue, and it really hides the solder flux, and it makes the board look really good. Now I've gotten better with perf board over the years, but I really missed the blue perf board, and it was some type of epoxy board. It wasn't FR4 or FR1, whatever the hell it is. It was some type of epoxy board, and Vector did away with it. Now this is Vector back here. This is Vector board. I get that from Jameco, and you can still get the pins. If you really look on Jameco, you can find the flea clips. I bought enough flea clips to last the rest of my life, and the tool's down on the floor somewhere. There it is. I have the tool that pushes the flea clip in. But I want to tell you, there were some really good times, you know, building a snow sled decoder, and it really wasn't a decoder. It was just a down converter. It down converted the gigahertz signal and down to 3 megas. What was it? Channel 3. I forget the frequency. It might have been like 56 megacycles, something like that. But it's funny. My father goes, "Well, how do you know that's going to work?" I said, "It's picking up the channel that's right next to that channel, and it's putting it down on channel 3." And he's just like, "Well, how do you know?" I'm like, "Oh, brother." And me and my father had these arguments all the time. And then when it would work, him and my mother would backpedal. They would gaslight. I know all these terms now, but they would say, "I never said that." And who's going to argue with their parents? But I built one project after another. And my father constantly brought stuff home from work for me to fix for his friends. You know, and that's the way it went. And I had no real life because I told you I hid in this stuff. And I'm being honest with you. The world has always been unrational to me. It's very unrational now. So what I would do is I would come home from work, which was really bad because we had a lot of people didn't know what they were doing. And I'd come home and I'd still build a project until I was sleepy enough to be able to go to bed. And a lot of times I would be on a project where I was in a rabbit hole and I'd lay there trying to fall asleep and my mind would be racing, trying to figure out what the problem was. I stay with the project. I might put it away for 2 or 3 days and clean up, but then I'm right back on it. And all it is a matter of going and do some more reading. And you'll bump into a person that had the same problem as you, and he put the thing away. And then you have the people that make suggestions that are always wrong. And then you go read an article on a similar project. And the person at the end of the article will say something like, watch out for this, watch out for that, don't do this, don't do that. And that's the stuff I remember in my head. It's like when you work with a regenerative radio, keep the wires really short, build it over a ground plane. Sometimes a toroid coil won't work. It'll be squirrely. It just gives you too much, I would say, Q. And the thing just oscillates like crazy. And it was really funny. I watched this one guy, he fixes radios. And he knows a lot more than I do in certain areas. But he actually took the ferrite core out of an IF can. And the light bulb went on for him that the ferrite cores in IF cans are different for different types of IF cans. In other words, the material that the core is made out of is different. And it's just like that with toroid coils. They're different colors because the composition of sometimes they use ground metal, they use oxides of different metal and epoxy, and they mix it together and they make a donut. And each ferrite, different colors are for different frequency ranges. And some of them are wider band than others. And some don't expand and contract as much. So you use those for the oscillator, and that'd be a yellow color. And there's just so much to this hobby. That's why I can get away from the rest of the world just by going and building a circuit, because you're guaranteed when you build something will go wrong. I think that's it. All right, that's it.